Hello there. Happy Friday. It's great to be here today with you and share some of the really cool things I've been learning and reading. If we haven't met, my name is Julie Hirschberg. I'm the owner, founder of Re+active Therapy and Wellness, which provides an integrated neuro rehabilitation for people with neurologic disorders and chronic disease. And I join live to share what we are learning together, what I'm reading, and I just love to chat with you all every week. So this week is no different, and I've got a couple of articles. I'm going to just share a couple of little tidbits today, and it's back to the autonomic nervous system, but this time relating it with the vestibular system. So first, let me give you a little background why I ended up here, and a big part of that goes to Jamie and Catherine, our two dizziness mentors, dizziness gurus that are part of our Brain Bites community. They have truly transformed how I think about the vestibular system and assessment and treatment. And rewind to last year around this time, they actually put together a webinar that was called Otolith, Don't You Forget About Me, because number one, they love 80s music, as I do, but number two, the otolith is often forgotten. So the otolith is part of our vestibular system, an often forgotten part, because I think we're often thinking of the semicircular canals and how we are moving our head side to side versus how we're moving our head forward and back and through space and up and down and all of those things. That's the otolith. So they did this fantastic webinar, and I really honestly just kind of like dove back into that webinar because we just put together that otolith webinar and the vestibular migraine webinar that they recently did, all their great cheat sheets and handouts all into one bundle for people. So if you've been following us for a while, you know that we love to kind of take what we're learning and put it into something that you can download and use with your own clients, or if you're a person with a neurologic disorder, that you can use this. I'm so sorry. My bangs need to be cut so badly. And whenever I go to do something, they just start like falling in my eyes. They're in that really awkward stage. We put these things into bundles, so that if you're a person also with a neurologic disorder, you can take this to your therapist and understand it yourself. So we just put together our complex dizziness bundle. You can download it if you go to our reactiveeducation.com, but also if you're on our newsletter, we're going to be sharing the links to all of the articles I talked about today, the resources, the dizziness bundle. So if you're not on our newsletter, you can join it at reactiveeducation.com if you're a healthcare provider, or reactivept.com. So this all started a year ago with the Otolith webinar. They since did the vestibular webinar, so vestibular migraine webinar, sorry. And that is a part of our complex dizziness bundle. And they shared some great insights in this otolith webinar, particularly some pieces about how the otolith is connected to the autonomic nervous system. And now, no surprise there, right? Like, it's becoming more and more obvious every day to me how interconnected our nervous system is. Um, but there's a very interesting link with the otolith. And if you're a person like me who maybe sees people who have sensitivity to head movement or movement through space, like riding a bike or running, exercising, maybe accelerating, moving up and down in an elevator, those sensitivities come from the otolith. And I think one of our big questions is, well, why might that otolith be so sensitive? And could it be this link between the autonomic nervous system? So we're going to hit very briefly on a couple of great articles. These will be linked in our newsletter One of them is the one that Jamie and Catherine talk about, and there's lots of great nuggets in the Otolith webinar, and that's the vestibular sympathetic response. So what we know about this almost kind of reflex, this kind of, it's a complex reflex, is that the vestibular system, the otoliths, are connected with the autonomic nervous system to distribute blood and change the blood pressure when we change positions. It makes a lot of sense, right? That needs to happen when we go from supine to sitting or sitting to standing. And this particular article, great free full text article, does really talk about this response and the evidence that demonstrates that the vestibular system does directly contribute to the regulation of blood distribution in our body and blood pressure during movement and changes in posture. Now, of course, there's other things, right? The vestibular system doesn't do that alone. There's baroreceptors and there's other parts of our cardiovascular system that does it, but the otolith contributes to that. So we cannot ignore it. And it's the otolith and not the semicircular canals, which is often what we think of in vestibular rehab and turning our heads and things like that. It's the otolith that regulates this sympathetic nervous system response. So there are, of course, pathways. So we got to get a little nerdy here for a moment and talk about the neuroanatomy because it's so fascinating. So there's a primary pathway that's descending track from our inferior vestibular nucleus to, of course, good old vagus, the dorsal motor nucleus of vagus, one of the key motor nuclei of the vagus nerves. Also, some projections to the medulla and the other vestibular nuclei and the parabrachial complex. These are key portions then that project to other parts of the brain stem, the forebrain, to integrate vestibular sensation with our autonomic control. Now, of course, the cerebellum gets in there. There's also some projections for cerebellar modulation, and various sites have been located within the cerebellum as well. So that's just literally one piece of a very highly connected system. What has also been shown through research is that these pathways also converge on the insula. So the insular cortex is another really important piece of our nervous system, and a key function of modulating those autonomic responses. So there's still a lot to learn here, of course. And one of the things that we do know about the insula is that it interacts with many parts of our limbic system too, including things like the amygdala. So that wasn't enough enough neuroanatomy. I think that's probably enough for us, but let's put that alongside the cardiovascular respiratory systems, right? Because this is kind of where it all interacts together. So we know that postural changes influence our cardio and vascular respiratory systems, because we have to have changes in blood flow and breathing. But there's other things that are also influenced here. So let's think beyond just like a drop in blood pressure, because I think that is one of the things that for sure we look at. Maybe we have people with autonomic dysfunction, and they have POTS and they have changes in blood pressure and heart rate, but other relationships are also being investigated here. So circadian rhythm is one of them. Bone development. This is really interesting to me because a lot of folks that I work with also have osteopenia or osteoporosis. So this vestibular autonomic interaction may also be influencing those things. Isn't that fascinating. I think it's so fascinating. Um, One other thing to to consider with kind of this reflex is that it's also very fast. It's actually what it looks like in the literature ahead of the reflexes that occur with some of the baroreceptors in modulating that blood flow response. So I shared something in a post today. So if you want to see it, you'll have to check out our Instagram. But there's actually a really great figure from another article that just came out a couple years ago to show this whole pathway. And I just love a good pathway. I love a good picture. So I posted one of the figures that outlines kind of what I just described verbally of this vestibular autonomic reflexes that are involved with the sympathetic and parasympathetic outflows. So very interesting. What does this mean, though, for us? So, number one, when people have it kind of means both ways. When somebody has vestibular function, we need to look at autonomic control. When somebody has autonomic dysfunction, we should be looking at vestibular control, and particularly not just the semicircular canals. So not just that control of head turning, but moving through space, um, moving and changing postures, we need to look at otolith control. There's several ways that we could do this, and Jamie and Catherine have a really great cheat sheet that's part of the bundle. Things looking at the subjective visual vertical, looking at posture and positioning of the head and body. How does that person align? Is there sensation of motion at rest? This is often otolith dysfunction. How does that respond with weight? So there's loads of things that we can do to screen otolith dysfunction. There's loads that we can do for the autonomic nervous system. I talk about this a lot. We can look at the eyes, right? So pupil dilation. We can look at perspiration, respiration, the effect of breath. We could look at blood pressure and heart rate variability, nausea, constipation, diarrhea, all of these things controlled by the autonomic nervous system. And then when it comes to integrating this, what I would say, like just so passionately here, is that we have to include both. Working on one system in isolation when it's so interconnected to the other, really and I feel like I've even done this personally, it can be detrimental for a person. So particularly vestibular training with autonomic training with vestibular training, they go hand in hand. And one of the pieces, and I talked about this last week, is that it's so important within both of those trainings is to discover a dimmer switch or an off switch, a way to decrease symptoms. So that is a key component of really all of the pieces kind of coming together. So I wanted to share that because just another really fascinated way where our nervous system is so interconnected. And we're going to keep diving into a lot of this integrated way that we see the nervous system, the body, us as humans. It's why we are so passionate about integrated care. This is where Re+active is moving to, where we're really primarily doing integrated care for all people that we see. It's one of the things that we love, and it's where we've seen really tremendous outcomes for people. And until then, we're going to just keep sharing what we're learning and doing. So if you're not already on our newsletter, join us at reactiveeducation.com or reactivept.com. Join our newsletter. We'll send out a summary. I'll send out those great articles that I referred to today. And we'll catch you next week. Actually, we'll have some special sessions next week because I'm going to the Functional Neurologic Disorder Society meeting at the beginning of the week. Actually, I fly out tomorrow. So we'll have some Really great updates from the F&D Society next week. I can't wait to share those with you as I am learning. So catch us next week, and thank you so much. Have a really wonderful weekend.